Welcome to iPad Pros, the show all about using your iPad to be productive and get work done. I'm Tim Chen, host of the show.
When people say, oh, it's not a real computer, it's like, I can do everything that my job requires with this, and it may not be exactly the way that I would do it on a MacBook. Like I could, just Alt-Tab between this and this and this and this. I got 20 plus years of muscle memory in me. I know how to make a computer do it a lot quicker than I can sometimes an iPad, but there's trade-offs that you're going to get with that's going to be a much bigger pain. Like I may not be able to connect into a network. I may not be able to get a usable network connection. I may not be able to, have something like CenterStage if I need that for where I'm at.
Welcome to iPad Pros. We're just days away from the announcement of iPadOS 15, and there will be a special episode next week all about that. But before we get to that, I want to spend a good amount of time covering the new iPad Pro 5th generation with the Liquid Retina XDR display. I asked Brian of the Infinite Loopback Podcast to join me to discuss these new iPads. He upgraded from the 10.5-inch second generation iPad Pro from 2017 to the 12.9-inch 2TB with 5G model that was just released. At the time of recording, we had both spent a little over a week with the new iPads and discussed in depth all about the new additions and upgrades to the 5th generation iPad Pro. Beyond just talking about the new iPad Pro, we do dive into how he uses the iPad in his role as a senior sales engineer. One fascinating tidbit of his workflow is how he uses a Raspberry Pi to create a personal VPN to access his home network anywhere in the world. Before we dive into the interview, I just want to remind everyone they can get episodes early and with embedded chapter markers for just $1 a month over at patreon.com/iPadPros. Right now, there are 2 episodes releasing at the end of June, already available to Patreon supporters. You can also get extra content like iPad Possibilities, iPad Ponderings, and iPad Historia by supporting the podcast at higher tiers. You can also support the podcast simply by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. Every review is super helpful, signaling to Apple to show this podcast more in search, helping new listeners discover the show. With that, here's my interview with Brian all about the XDR iPad Pro. Enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, Brian.
I've listened for a long time, Tim, and I'm happy to be here today.
It's good to have you here to talk about this new XDR iPad Pro. You're the first person that I've spoken to on the podcast about this since actually having it in my hands and your hands as well.
Well, I'm glad to be the first to discuss it. I was sort of in the hospital, and I was like, I'm still going to do this no matter what. There better not be a doctor or a nurse in my room at 8 a.m. on Friday morning when pre-orders go live, because I have been dying to get a new iPad literally for the last 2 or 3 years, and nothing's going to stand in my way. I want this on launch day, and boy, howdy, was I not disappointed by this at all.
That's great to hear. And yeah, we're going to dive into that fully. This is going to be mostly about the XDR iPad Pro, but also about how you use the iPad. And you're talking about the pre-orders. That was quite the weird experience of the store never going down and just like, what's going on here? And, we eventually both got ours for launch day, which is great.
It took about 7 minutes, but yeah, I was killing the app and going back in like something's not right here. Something's not right. I'm not connecting to the right place. Where's the iPad?
Yeah.
But yeah, the pre-orders actually went pretty smooth. They seem to have gotten it figured out. No more doing things at 3 a.m. on the East Coast, so I'm real happy about that.
Oh yeah, that's great. And what are you upgrading from?
So I had the 512 gig, 10.5 inch, 2017 iPad Pro.
It's a great model. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very happy with it. So in my history with the iPad Pro, back in 2015, I did get the 12.9 inch. So I was no stranger to the 12.9 inch. I had that for, until 2017, I guess. And I liked it a lot. It was fine. It was a little bit on the heavy side. Like many people, I'm probably ashamed to admit that I'd be reading books on it and have it over my head, and I dropped it on my face a couple of times.
Oh, so. I did that too, that original model in the second gen at that size.
Yeah.
Falling asleep with it, and boom.
Boom. It's a nice way to wake up. So, I was trying to find something that was more of an ideal form factor, particularly during those days. I traveled a lot more, and trying to find the ideal trade-off between screen size and usability for me was something that was really important. So the 10.5 inch, I actually bought the 12.9 and the 10.5 in 2017, and I kept them both for about a week. And in the end, it was like, all right, the 10.5 is just going to win out for this iteration. So the 10.5, though, seemed to be like the perfect form factor. It was not too heavy, not too large. My big consideration is I wanted to be able to shove it into a sling bag, put it on a plane with me, have it fit under a seat. These are a lot of things that when you travel for work, and even personal, but work primarily, you want to be able to have some sort of comfort on that plane versus, having it something unwieldy, something that somebody can lean a chair back into the plane seat in front of you and bend your iPad. Those types of things were really a big concern. So I had to pick something that was going to be, sort of the right form factor. So that played into my decision. And then when 2018 came around, I had other things that were going on that I wanted to buy. And I was like, you know what, I'll just hold off till the next one. And of course, when the next one came out, 2020, it wasn't that much of an upgrade. So this was a little bit of an unusual cycle for me in the sense that I desperately wanted to get the 12.9. I wanted to go back to the bigger iPad, but I wanted that upgrade when it finally happened to be something that was really significant and really worthwhile. And that was what I was aiming for in holding off for the 2021, which couldn't seem to come fast enough.
Yeah.
So, minor spoiler, when I was in the hospital this past fall, my friend and podcast co-host allowed me to borrow his 12.9, the Magic Keyboard, the pencil. So I got to play with it for a week or so and, just sort of get an idea of what I was going to be in for. But I was already sold before that. So
yeah, the Magic Keyboard to me was the big moment of, that's a substantial upgrade with the 2020 model, just having that Magic Keyboard and waiting another year for the XDR display and the M1. A huge jump there from the 2017. And that 10.5-inch model, I have a special place in my heart for that one. That one to me feels like the pinnacle of design for the home button iPads, the smallest bezel possible in the original, form factor of that iPad,
Yes, and there wasn't a lot of compromise, which I really appreciated about that iPad. Of course, at 4 years old, mine was starting to have issues, and the battery wouldn't last. I even had Apple. I even paid $99 last fall to have a battery swapped out by Apple, and I still had issues with it. So it was long in the tooth, and it got swapped out through the trade-in program for $280 worth of credit on this iPad. So
not bad.
Yeah, I mean, I could have probably got more on the open market, but who wants to mess with that, honestly? And Apple won't shortchange you either. So if they say $280, you're getting $280.
Right. And you upgraded to the fully maxed out 2 terabyte cellular enabled Space Gray or Silver model?
Space Gray. I went all in on this one. This is going to be my primary computer. The only thing that I have a little bit of trouble with is when I'm recording podcasts. There's no audio hijack for iPad Pro, but otherwise, this is going to be my primary computer. So anything that I need to do, it's going to be done on that unless there's some weird use case that I need.
Yeah. For audio recording, you need like an external Zoom, like H4n or H6 to make that work on iPad, is what I've found at least.
Yeah, I've considered building sort of a Frankenpod sort of situation. I've seen a ton of those with the external mixers and the other accoutrements, let's say, that you need to build it, and it just seems like so much trouble when the Mac does it so much easier.
Yep.
So,
if you already have a tool that can do that, why not use that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So Magic Keyboard as well in Space Gray, I'm assuming?
Yes, the white was kind of appealing, but I'm always worried about how difficult something like that is going to be to keep clean. I mean, the white does look beautiful, but it's just, I don't have the best track record. I know I'm a sort of a greasy-fingered fella. I used to, as sort of a running joke between me and my podcast co-host, whenever there are iPhone cases that come out, they always go for the leather. I always go for the silicone.
Yeah.
Just because I have ruined the leather cases in the past, something gets on my hands and then there's like these streaks on the leather and I can never get it off. And it's, and I try not to. Even before the pandemic, I was a big hand sanitizing sort of OCD clean type of guy, and it still happens. So I just get sort of nervous, and I know the black will hide the stains a little bit better.
Yeah, I was very tempted by the white because it is beautiful. All the photos I see, it's so beautiful. But there's a couple things about the black one. I use the iPad in this keyboard as like a movie stand in bed sometimes because that hinge is so good. It can be like almost hovering above your head and it's not going to fall. And the white seems like that'd be kind of distracting. And then just the beauty of the backlit keys on the black keys looks so much better than backlighting white keys. It doesn't seem to have the beauty there, especially even in daytime settings. That backlight will go on for the Magic Keyboard, and it looks very nice just seeing that contrast there, which you wouldn't have with the white model.
So that's a great point. That's 2 great points, actually, that you bring up, because that's also why I used to hate the silver iPad, because they would put the white bezels on it. And if you're watching a movie, having those white bezels are very distracting.
Yeah.
Which is also another pet peeve of mine about the new M1 iMacs that came out as well.
Sure.
But, that's a great point, is when you're watching this thing, and it is a great movie consumption device. I mean, the screen is arguably one of the best screens that Apple makes that's not a $6,000 a desktop monitor.
Yeah.
So,
and the speakers are great, even if you don't have headphones.
Yeah. So not having that as a distraction is also a great point. I didn't even consider that on the White Magic keyboard, but had I bought it, it would have definitely been something I would have noticed within the first day or two.
Yeah. And I prefer the silver iPad Pro these days because you see just a faint outline that just adds a little bit of beauty and elegance, a little just glimmer, to your setup. And when you take it off the Magic Keyboard, it's it's kind of pretty like that. So that's why I went silver.
Even though I know that in my mind, I still have this bias against it that it doesn't have the white anymore. So I probably should next iteration consider that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a nice kind of contrast, especially you seeing in the Magic Keyboard closed, even the two-tone look. I kind of like it. But yeah. We're going to dive into kind of all that you do with the iPad, but first let's talk a bit about the iPad itself. And the screen, I guess, is the first thing that really jumps out at this one. It's the XDR display, and I wasn't quite sure what to expect with this. It can go up to 1600 nits or 1000 nits for full screen in HDR context. But otherwise, it's the same 600 nits we've had since the second generation, where it jumped from 400 to 600 nits in that gen. And I wasn't sure, is this going to be better outside and different things like that? What's your experience been with the screen so far, comparing it to that second gen screen?
Well, I haven't exactly taken it outside just yet, so I don't really have a frame of comparison there. But something I have noticed, and this is something I saw you mention on Twitter as well, is even when you turn the brightness down, it still seems like it's at full brightness. It's hard to describe adequately to someone who hasn't seen it, but the blacks really pop on this. I mean, the XDR display, when you're watching something that's in Dolby Vision, is really, really nice. So things that are on Disney Plus, things that are on HBO Max, things that are on Netflix that are specifically for that with the HDR.
And you pay for the Netflix tier that supports that, because I don't.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. You got to. I mean, Army of the Dead with all those zombies, and
it's such an upcharge with the Netflix. I feel it's like an extra $5 or something silly, isn't it?
It is, but even if you don't do that, so if you do HBO Max, there's no upcharge for that.
There isn't.
So
no.
A lot of not only that, HBO Max supports the spatial audio, which if you if you're using it on the AirPods is fantastic. And Disney Plus, there's no upcharges either.
Yeah.
So
and then iTunes, I've got a bunch of movies there that I get to experience it as well.
Oh yeah. The 4K Dolby Vision stuff in iTunes is the same way. But it really, honestly, we may talk about my OCD a little bit through here, but I keep these little screen wipes so I can even keep my little fingerprints off the screen if I'm going to watch something really nice, because I want to be completely lost in this when I watch it. It is that great. I mean, this is the thing that if you are on the fence about getting an iPad, this should be the thing that bumps you over. If you spend any amount of time watching stuff on your iPad, this is the device to do it with. I mean, it looks absolutely amazing. Now, I should take it outside just to see how it fares outside, but my hopes aren't really up there. I mean, what have you discovered? Have you taken it out to to see?
I did some just quick tests, and it seemed to be a little better. I need to do more extensive testing because it really was just a couple minutes. And my iPad Pro second generation, I tried to test it, but the battery was at 2%, and then it died pretty quickly. So I'll have to report back on that one.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, the video content looks amazing. Blacks in general look amazing. So I'm using dark mode now all day long because it just looks so good. It really does. And yeah, as you said, max brightness, you turn it down 20%, and that's when you start to see the brightness actually start to go down. It's kind of weird and amazing. And I've noticed my battery is lasting longer on this iPad because my old iPad, I would have it at 100% all the time, and now I'm at maybe 60%, 65%, and that's comfortable. So the battery's lasting longer because I'm not cranking the brightness to max to be able to see it as well.
Yeah, and I've noticed that the Magic Keyboard actually drains the battery more than just normal use does. So if I just attach the Magic Keyboard and I'm sitting there using it to browse the internet or watch stuff, the battery lasts even longer. So the M1 is doing what it is supposed to do. It is very, very efficient right now, and I can't wait to see what they do with iPad OS 15 in that regard. But right now, I leave the cellular on as well, even when I'm at home. And just because I'm wanting to see, practically how long can I expect the battery to last.
Right.
And it's usually 10, 20% per day if I barely touch it. And then, maybe halfway through under normal usage with a Magic Keyboard attached. So I've been very, very pleased with the battery life so far.
Yeah, and then the other thing I just want to point out is if you're in picture-in-picture mode with an HDR movie, that's a really cool experience because it'll brighten up just that corner of your display for the movie, and super noticeable and really cool.
Yeah, they've really outdone themselves on the screen. So, if there are people out there that are listening that have the 2018 and the 2020, I know they may be thinking, this is not really that worth the upgrade. I don't know. If you spend a lot of time on it, I would say at least the 256 would probably be worth the upgrade, if nothing else. But yeah.
Yeah, I've said it before. The second generation iPad Pro to me was one of the biggest generational leaps just because of all the screen tech they did that year. As ProMotion, it was the color gamut, True Tone. All that stuff was in that one generation, and the screen's the thing you interact with all day long, and it makes a substantial difference how you experience iPad. And it feels like this fifth generation is another moment in time like that for the 12.9, where we have the second generation, now the fifth generation is another leap in screen tech, and that's a big deal for how you experience iPad.
Sure, absolutely, and it can't be underestimated.
And the other thing I just want to point out, there are some things about the screen that are a bit odd, or whatever I should say. If you're just scrolling really quickly, doing the ProMotion thing with white text and a black background, it could sometimes turn the text a little blue, I've noticed, which is a bit odd. It's not like a big deal because I'm like quickly scrolling through a list trying to get to some place, but I will notice that color shift a little bit for that. And the blooming thing, I've not experienced it being an issue at all. I've noticed it occasionally at max brightness in some scenarios, but that hasn't really stuck out to me as something I'm looking at and noticing an issue with, at least.
There's a certain amount of slack that I have with my old eyes, which I need glasses again anyway. So certain things I'm just not going to catch as easily. And, as someone who's prided themselves on their review, I apologize for that, but it's just one of those things where I'm not going to notice the blooming necessarily. The blue, yeah, a little bit, but again, I don't really view that as a defect. It's just, what are my eyes going to be able to perceive at that high of a frame rate? I'm not even really sure. So
yeah,
I'll give them a little bit of a pass on that one.
Yeah, but it's amazing that the ability to keep the brightness lower and it's still plenty bright. Like, that's something just really cool, because it's supposed to be the same 600 nits for the standard output, and it seems to be doing something to make it more visible for me, at least.
It certainly feels very, very bright, even when you wouldn't expect it to be. So doing dark mode is also a plus, too, if you first wake up and you grab your iPad. Otherwise, if you're not in dark mode, oh my God, it's so bright.
Yeah.
It just kind of hurts your eyes, kind of.
And the physical device itself, coming from the last generation 2020, you do feel it being kind of denser. It's like, it's more substantial.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. It one of the funny things that I've noticed in carrying iPads around, especially since the 10.5 was my everyday carry, was when I took this out and about the other day, my bag was noticeably heavier. I also have a TomToc case that I use that I saw Christopher Lawley had recommended for his 2020, and that was one of the accessories that I had gotten as well. And it's a great case, but the whole thing was just huge. And Magic Keyboard, the iPad itself, my bag was noticeably heavier in my arms right now than it was, with the 10.5, to the point that I was like, I sort of even favored my arm a little bit. So it definitely has a lot more heft than the other one. I will not be dropping this one on my face unless I'll be getting a concussion.
Right.
It just definitely feels heavier. So it's probably in my mind, but...
Yeah, it should be about the same as that original iPad Pro 12.9, the 1.5 pound size class. So that case you have, it's a case that wraps around the Magic Keyboard as well. It's not like a case for the iPad as a standalone unit?
No. It's just a travel case. So I'll have to send you a link that you can put in the show notes. But it's an awesome $40 case. It's one that I saw Christopher Lawley had recommended in one of his videos, and I had to have it. And it's very utilitarian. It has room for the pencil, for any accessories if you want to do SD cards. I have a SteelSeries dongle, I guess, that allows you to put your phone on top of a controller that I just keep in there.
Yeah.
I've had the 30-watt charger, the cables. It's perfect, and it's a great form factor. It's hard shell, but not really. Mm-hmm. Sort of hard to explain. It's sort of a fabric material.
Okay.
But it's very, very sturdy.
Gotcha.
And I just use that when I travel. So.
Okay. Yeah, I use the Waterfield Designs kind of sleeve case and their little piggyback that you can strap to it to throw my accessories in as my go-to.
The one thing the Waterfield, all the stuff they make are actually, beautiful. I have the AirPods Max as well, but I don't trust myself with, not being a little bit clumsy. And I'm always just afraid that it's not going to provide any sort of resistance when it comes to hitting the floor, hitting an object, something like that. So that's why, even though they're beautiful and wonderfully made, and I like the way that they look, it's just one of those things where I don't trust myself. So it's like, I always got to get something that's got like a little more ballistic type of...
Right. Yeah, it's a hard shell, as you said. It's very, there's plenty of fabric there, so if I did drop it, I feel like I'd be pretty protected. They do make slimmer sleeves that don't offer that kind of protection, but the one I got, the Sleevecase, it's pretty substantial as far as that, I think. But I understand the hard shell cases and stuff have definitely their place for use.
Yeah, and I try not to overdo it. I try to get something that's not like, super ugly and hard cased. And I usually look for something it's at least somewhat aesthetically pleasing to go along with those types of things. So
yeah, it's
some sort of material, but it's not very soft.
Yeah, and I like the Waterfield because it's kind of like a family of different things. So for my birthday coming up, I'm getting like the AirPods Max, and to go with that, the Waterfield Designs case, it kind of matches my iPad bag and stuff. So it's all themed kind of the same, which I like.
You're gonna love the Max, by the way. Best noise canceling I've had on any, and I used to do the Sony XM2, 3, and 4. I've had all 4 generations, and it's gonna blow you away. But anyway,
yeah, I'm so excited for those. That'll be another show because those are coming. My birthday is on June 5th, so that's coming up very soon here. That I'll be getting those. And
happy early birthday!
Oh, thank you. So yeah, very excited because I've been wanting these since they came out last December, whatever it was, and finally. Get try them out. And spatial audio on the AirPods Pro is just great. So I'm excited to see what that's a better version of that even with the headphone. Yeah. And then as far as the iPad, my HyperDrive, the little portable dock thing you throw on your iPad, I noticed the little bracket design for the 2020 and 2018 model doesn't fit. So I have to use that dock kind of naked now because of the thickness. So that is a little just a note for those upgrading.
Yeah, I got the OWC 4-port Thunderbolt dock to go along actually with my Mac Mini, my M1 Mac Mini. And, when they announced that there was going to be Thunderbolt 4 support on the iPad, I'm like, hey, bonus, right? This will work on either one. And I've tried it on both and works exactly as you would expect. So, as luck would have it, I have a number of small USB-C and Thunderbolt hard drives. Well, not hard drives, SSDs.
Yeah.
So I'm able to plug those into the hub and then plug those directly into the iPad itself. Copying large files around for things like LumaFusion, you really get the high transfer speeds. Nothing that you would have thought out of the ordinary there. My experiences, I don't know if anyone has seen the Christopher Lawley iPad Pro review, but I found the exact same experience, particularly with the Files app. So things can go into the background. If you're transferring large files, you no longer need to leave those in the foreground. It works wonderfully well.
Yeah, that's so cool, right? With the RAM being able to just keep going.
Yeah, having that was the other thing about getting a 1 or a 2 terabyte model was, first of all, I wanted to future-proof it as much as possible. I don't plan on upgrading this thing next year. I plan on hanging on to this thing for 2 or 3 years at least. And I wanted to see if it actually lived up to the hype. By getting that 16 gigs of RAM, what are some of the practical differences we actually see? And that not swapping as much is certainly one of the things that can take advantage of it. And everyone is certainly expecting iPadOS 15 to have something, that seems to take advantage of that higher amount of RAM. And that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, definitely. And curious what happens with that one. That'll be on the next episode as we talk about iPadOS 15. It'll be finally be announced very soon here. And as far as Thunderbolt, so what's in the 4-port dock that you got?
Well, for the 4-port dock, basically my biggest constraint, and again, when I bought this was really around the around the Mac Mini itself that I had just gotten back in like February. And I bought that with a 512 gig drive, but I like to move, I'll shoot stuff on the iPhone. The iPhone can do some wonderful 4K video, and you just got to have the space to save it. So being able to move those files around. My wife loves photography on the iPhone. She takes tons of pictures. We take tons of video. And she has an 8. She doesn't want an upgrade, even though it kills me. Mm-hmm. So whenever we shoot video, we always shoot it on my phone because, I can do the maximum size. And I keep a lot of space available. I think I have the 512 or 1 terabyte, whatever the largest iPhone 12 Pro is. That's what I've done for that reason, because we go on vacations, we take a lot of video, and being able to shuffle that video around easily has been sort of a challenge for me in the past. So I didn't want to have to necessarily airdrop things. So I wanted to have have, hard drives hanging off of the dock for the M1 Mac Mini, because I can transfer the footage from one to the other and then, sort of daisy chain it. Even though that seems kind of inefficient, it's still faster than moving things around via AirDrop or what have you. And you don't want any loss of fidelity.
And are the drives themselves Thunderbolt drives, or is it going through USB 3?
They're USB 3 in a lot of cases. So I do have a couple that I've upgraded here recently. So long story short, my Windows gaming machine was getting a little long in the tooth. So I decided to sort of go on a hard drive SSD spree when I would see them on Amazon for a lowered price. So I've been buying new hard drives and then shuffling them around. You get this one, you get that one. All right, I'm going to have this one over here and this one over there. And, since I've had some health issues this last year, I haven't shot as much video in the last few months as I would have liked. But I do have a couple of Thunderbolt drives that I have hanging off the M1. But I was able to try those with the dock. Basically, just replicate the same setup that I had on my iPad that I was doing on my M1 Mac Mini, because the use case was really kind of the same. On the M1 Mac Mini, I'm sort of ashamed to admit this, but I went ahead and loaded up LumaFusion and was playing with video on the M1 Mac Mini, and having hard drives hung off of it, where I can consolidate everything into sort of one place. And then I could just kind of unplug it, move it over to the iPad Pro, and ta-da, use LumaFusion over there and do the same thing.
Yeah, and the next update to LumaFusion will enable you to edit directly off of those hard drives or SSDs.
It's gonna be wonderful when they finally do that. I mean, for the price you pay for that product, it gives Final Cut or Premiere Pro, which is normally my tool of choice, a real run for its money. So it's amazing what they're able to do, and they don't charge that much for it. So anybody out there who's listening who wants to play with it and take the plunge, buy this software. It's great. Even if you play with it twice and never touch it again, it is worthwhile.
Yeah, the one thing I missed from Final Cut is the multi-cam editing, which they're finally doing this year. So
yes,
that's been the one thing I missed from my MacBook Air from 2011, and I did use Final Cut Pro on that thing, and it ran very well in its time, at least.
Yep.
And that's the one thing I still miss, and it's finally coming. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's going to be wonderful.
Yeah. So speaking of cameras and shooting footage and stuff, the front-facing camera on this iPad Pro is a super ultra-wide camera that enables CenterStage, which I've been super impressed with. And there are some apps like FilmicPro that will let you record CenterStage videos just locally. So if you are using LumaFusion and want to do some kind of front-facing camera work with that CenterStage feature, you could actually incorporate that into a video with FilmicPro, which is kind of a cool way to do that.
It surprised me at launch how many things kind of supported this. So FilmicPro, which is also great on the iPhone. If you have that on an iPhone Pro, being able to do dual camera work on that is wonderful. So it's not really surprising that it also rules on the iPad. But again, whenever there's a new feature for iOS when it comes to the cameras, Filmic has it going on. I used their software going back, I think, to the 3GS or 4 back when I don't know if you remember when they first did their thing, but even then it blew the features on a normal iPhone camera away. So Filmic is wonderful. I just now loaded that onto my iPad, though I haven't had a chance to play with that as much as I would have liked. Using the CenterStage for FaceTime, if you watch the reviews on YouTube, it really doesn't do it justice until you're doing it yourself. Having it so that the camera will move in and move out is like having really your own personal cameraman. It is wonderful. So this past week I was in the hospital. I was FaceTiming my mom. My wife was in the room and she dipped in and out of frame. And even though the iPad was only probably a foot away from me at the time, it would zoom out, zoom in, do everything that you would want it to do professionally. There was no jarring effects. It was nothing. It was so buttery smooth that it was just unbelievable how well that it worked. And when I am able to go back to work and use Zoom again for a normal purpose, seeing that it's already supported in Zoom, you and I were playing with it before we recorded. It's already supported in Skype.
Yeah.
This is truly a sort of a killer feature for the 2021 upgrade.
It is really remarkable. And one thing I was pointing out before the call is the fact that the camera placement is still on the side, but on older models, you'd have to adjust your tilt of your iPad to accommodate the camera so it would look the best, right? So if you wanted to be full tilt on the Magic Keyboard, your camera would be facing the ceiling. This time around, you can do that, and you'll notice CenterStage just automatically adjusts so it can look the best that it's able to given the placement of the camera. So you can tilt your iPad any which way you want, and it'll kind of adjust appropriately when you're in that laptop configuration.
Yes, it doesn't look like it's shooting up your nose anymore. It's kind of neat how it accomplishes that. So I was telling my mom that I really wish I got her an iPad, just a regular new iPad last fall. Hers was years old and had no more updates or anything. And I kind of wish that I had gotten her something like this, simply because much like, when you FaceTime older people, you get the top of their head or something like that.
Right.
Or, I'm sitting there having a conversation with the ceiling and her hair instead of her face. So when that finally makes it down to the entry-level iPad, it'll be a great day for me.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And yeah, as you said, it's really cool just like going from the far left and just like seeing it find you and just like slowly pan over to you. And it's like, there you are. And it's really graceful in the animations it does to capture all the people.
And if you do it with multiple people, it's still graceful when it has multiple faces to choose from. So it'll zoom out, capture you if you're not moving, but if the other person is, it'll still keep you in frame and still find a way to keep them in frame. It really is remarkable what they've accomplished.
Yeah. I wish there was a pet mode to enable animals.
Yes, that would be nice.
And I guess I also kind of wish there was a quick toggle, maybe a shortcut to turn it off system-wide. So, because one thing I'm thinking of is people might like to try to eat a snack or a drink off camera. Yeah,
yes.
If you have this enabled, that's not going to happen very easily.
Or if you have little ones that are running around in the background too, it's going to constantly.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That would be a problem. Not for me, but I would assume for a lot of folks, you're going to be having a Zoom call if you're working or something, and if your kid runs through in the background, then might be a little distracting to everyone else on the call.
Yeah, currently it's an app by app setting. I'd love if there was a system wide just on off thing as well.
Yeah,
and it's also kind of curious if you open the camera app, you're not able to just gracefully zoom in and out of this camera. Like on the 12 mini I have, on that back camera, I can go to, 0.5 and it goes all the way up to whatever the maximum zoom is. You can kind of go between the cameras gracefully. This one, you're either in ultra wide mode or you're in the virtualized old iPad camera where it kind of virtualizes what the old setup would be.
Yeah, and I think that's probably just a trade-off on the basis of the fact that I know a lot of people use the iPad. It's something that it's weird to me when you go out and about, you see people using the iPad as an iPhone type camera. So maybe that was the trade-off that they just decided to sort of drop to discourage that behavior. It's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. Yeah, and I guess Halide did a write-up on it, but iPad OS sees it as two separate cameras, like hardware cameras, but it's all done via software to make that happen.
Yeah.
And then Halide also discovered that the focal distance in that rear camera is something special, where you can do macro photography if you use an app that's not auto-adjusting all the time, which is kind of cool. The iPhone is not able to do this, but the iPad, I guess, is able to capture macros.
Which is a weird thing when you think about it. You'd always think that the best and the most advanced is going to be in the iPhone always, but it's a weird feature. But we just could see that in the iPhone 13 as well.
Yeah, and I wonder, is there something about, how the sensors are arranged where it makes not as much sense to do that on iPhone? I'm not sure if there's any drawbacks to this design for other photography modes that aren't macros.
Yeah, I'm not really sure, but I'm glad that apps like Halide can do what they're able to do and that they dig in and find out right away what the hardware is capable of. It saves folks like us a lot of time from having to go in and figure stuff like that out. So it's really nice.
Yeah, and it's great time that they actually have a camera app for iPad now. They just released a version for iPad, which is really cool.
So I noticed you got the cellular version too as part of your build out.
Yeah, seems like this time around, why not? You get that rebate.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty much free. I say that, having to pay now the cost. I mean, I was always a big cellular guy in the beginning anyway. Like I would always get those for the iPad just because, you go on vacation, you go to the mall, you go somewhere, you want to sit and have a coffee and, your phone just maybe won't cut it. So why not have that cellular connectivity if you can swing it? And of course, on all the iPads this year, every major carrier was giving you basically $200 back, which is now oddly the exact cost of what it costs to get a cellular version of the iPad. So,
yeah, and I discovered if you get a baseline 329 iPad and do the cell upgrade, which is $130, it's across the board. They'll give you $200 for a $130 upgrade on those iPads as well, which is kind of
yeah. So you make a little something back on that.
Yeah.
So you went with T-Mobile, I think, and I went with Verizon. What's your experience been like with T-Mobile?
Yeah. So T-Mobile's my phone carrier, and I guess you have to get it the one that goes with your phone carrier because all these are postpaid, and you can't just have a postpaid iPad account with any of them, which is kind of lame. I wish you could. But so far, so good. It was super easy to sign up for the plan. It's a believe $30 a month plan that they make you get. There might be some discounts with auto pay, but you have to do this for like 2 months, I believe, at most, and they'll give you your $200 credit card basically that you can use anywhere, and you have to use that credit card within 6 months. I'm going to use that right away so they don't get their money from me. And after that, I'm going to switch probably to their prepaid plans, which gives you 5 gigabytes every 5 months for $10. And if you run out of data, you can just give them another $10, which ultimately that seems like the plan that the best, because I'm not doing intensive uploads or downloads of video streaming on the go. I just kind of want it for email access, Twitter, and web browsing when I'm out and about.
Yeah, Verizon has something similar. So I have many different lines on Verizon, and I think for their top-of-the-line iPad, whatever, I'm paying $15 a month right now for it. And it's ultra-wide, 5G, but I still can't seem to find in Atlanta, this is where I live, and I've spent a lot of time downtown where I didn't really want to the last couple of months, but I get 5 bars of just normal 5G, which is great. I'm getting the top LTE speed, so I get like a couple hundred down and sometimes 150 up, and that's fine enough when I'm out and about. But I've really wanted to find the areas that have the ultra wide, so that I could get like the a gig down or 2 gigs down, something like that. Really put it through its paces. But the process was seamless for me. They made it seem like they were going to send you a SIM card, but they did not. And I was able to use the onboard eSIM and get going right away. And it's been pretty fast when I've needed it. So
that's good to hear. Yeah, because with Verizon, if you're not a phone customer of theirs, it is such a pain in the butt to try to get service. You have to have them send you a SIM card. There's no way to do it on device. It's a headache. Yeah, if you cancel your prepaid service, you have to reactivate within like 3 months. Otherwise, that SIM card is useless. And it's far-fetched from the old days of the original iPads, where it's just like, oh, you just activate, turn on, off at will. And
They've had eSIMs in the phones and the iPads forever now, for like 3 or 4 years, and it's still a nightmare. I had to get my parents signed up on an eSIM on their phone last fall. I moved one of their phone lines to be the secondary line on their iPhone, just so they could keep the number. They'd had the number for like 50 years or something.
Yeah.
And it took 2 hours on the phone with Verizon, with them in the store, to figure out how to do it. So I was not, expecting the eSIM thing for my iPad to go pretty smooth, but it did. I was up and running very fast, and, the data is very good. I like Verizon a lot, but even though they boast they have the greatest whatever deployment, it's very, very still hard to find the ultra wide.
You have to be in direct line of sight with that stuff. So I imagine somewhere in Atlanta you could find a street corner that has it. But you said 150 up with the regular 5G. Is that right?
Sometimes I've gotten as high as that before. My home internet doesn't get like more than 10 up. So that's like I'd love having that kind of speeds. T-Mobile, I was getting at most 8 up and 80 down with my 5G in New Hampshire. If I was in a city, I'm sure it'd be much faster speeds, but that's kind of what I got. And that was faster than my LTE speeds, and I was finding 5G occasionally where I'm at. Yeah, in downtown Atlanta, I got to say, the Verizon deployments are very, very good. Even in the hospital where it was a lot of concrete and glass and those types of things, I was getting crazy speeds. In fact, it was so much faster than the Wi-Fi that I think in 1 month I did 100 gigs on Verizon, and they were kind of like, okay, we're about to start throttling you back a little bit. Yeah. Even though you have unlimited, it's like, take it easy here with the... But I was downloading 2 gig games at a pop. I was downloading this and that, and I was really hammering that thing, but was never able to get the ultra wide speeds. The one thing that I'm excited for on the ultra wide, I'm assuming it's the ultra wide, is that Apple had a support document this week in which they talk about you're going to be able to download iOS updates over the air. Now, since there was an iOS update available for my iPad, I was sitting in the hospital. I had great 5G, except no ultra wide. I decided to test this, and it is not working for 14.5.1. So to go from 14.5.1 to 14.6, I was not able to do this.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it needs ultra-wide, or maybe it comes with iOS 15 or something that they enable that. It would be nice to be able to do that.
Yeah, they got a little ahead of themselves.
Yeah, and I have had cellular on most of the iPads. So I had the original iPad, the iPad 2, the iPad Air, and then Air 2, and then the iPad Pro. So that was kind of my iPads. I believe that's everything I've had so far. I've had cellular on all of them except for the Pro first and second generation, and then 2020 and 2021 Pros. I have cellular again, and I really missed it on the two iPads I didn't have it with, that first and second generation Pro. It's just such a difference. Like, tethering is such a painful experience trying to get that right and connected. It's just a hassle, and it's always slower than being natively on board.
It is always. Yes, it is always so much slower than anything else you're going to do.
Yeah.
I've always regretted not having it more than I've regretted having the $130. That was when you need it, you really need it. And if you travel for work, there's no MacBook that you can get that has cellular in it.
Not yet. Hopefully that happens one day, because there's a lot of people in my life that would be super excited to get one of those.
I hear that, but I always think back to that old Marco Arment story where he talked about tethering his phone to his Mac overnight when he was traveling, and a new episode of Mad Men came out or something.
Yeah.
And iTunes automatically downloaded it, and he had hit his data cap for the month.
I'm sure when this happens, the OS will be smarter about this stuff too.
Well, there is a program out there called Trip Mode that you can get that's pretty good about, tightening the bolts down and not letting things out.
Yeah, but it'll be
unless you
native.
explicitly.
From Apple, I'd imagine.
Yeah, but still, it's easy to go over. With if you're really not careful, if there's some application you forgot about, or yeah. So that's the one thing. But at least you're protected on the iOS devices. So when it comes to traveling for work, if you can get away with using an iPad instead of a Mac, it'll save your bacon on more than one occasion.
Yeah, and especially if work's paying for it, they can also on the iPad.
Yes.
It's really cool that there's two data plans that can be active simultaneously. So the eSIM and physical SIM, you could have Verizon and AT&T on the same device, and say you're in a bad area for AT&T, you can switch to Verizon and vice versa, and you can just hot swap at any time. It's pretty cool.
Which I definitely plan on doing. There have been places where I've went. There's one place that I've gone in all my travels that's near the U.S.-Mexico border where only AT&T worked. There was no Verizon. If I ever go back there again, which I hope to, I plan on having an AT&T either physical SIM or something in there to, so I have both my bases covered of being able to get coverage, because nothing's worse than when you pay for cellular and then can't use it.
Right. The other thing about Cell I just want to notice or make note of is that to do the promotional deal, I had to use the Shortcuts app to submit my proof of purchase. So they made you upload either an image or a PDF of your receipt, and that was fine. I was able to get the PDF by going to apple.com and getting the receipt from that, and then doing a screenshot and doing the full page thing where it generates the full screen of what the web browser shows you. So that was easy enough, and then use my iPad camera to grab a photo of the box showing the IMEI number. But the photo was way too large to upload into T-Mobile systems, so I had to use Shortcuts to downsample the photo to an appropriate resolution. Because even if I tried to screenshot the photo thinking maybe that's smaller, that was still too big. So just kind of fun trials and tribulations of trying to upload things to T-Mobile's system where it didn't like larger files that were being generated.
This is one of those where you have to jump through the hoops to make it a real computer type of situations that I absolutely hate. So no, I feel you on that one. Verizon, I didn't have to go to quite that level, but
yeah. What was the promotional setup for them? How'd you have to prove you get this 150? Is it 150 through Verizon?
I think it's like 200, but it's like a Verizon gift card, so you only use it towards your bill. So
that's right. AT&T was the 150, and they do that through you basically get a $5 bill instead of a $10 bill for 2 years, which that's a good deal if you're planning on doing that plan,
It's the IMEI and something else that you had to submit to a form.
Okay.
It wasn't that huge of a deal, but then again, I'm keying Shortcut over here, so I have tons of those for like JPEGs and PDFs and stitching things together, and not my first rodeo when it comes to having to do a rebate. So my wife in particular will do stuff with a certain application that requires PDFs to be done in that way, where you stitch together imagine a CVS receipt, something that long, where it's this big of a picture. You have to take pictures in sections, and I've had to come up with some pretty clever shortcuts to be able to shrink things down. So something like that, even if presented with that, wouldn't have been a big deal for me. So
okay.
But yeah, the $200 that you can only spend at Verizon was also sort of annoying.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, well, I have a bill every month anyway, so.
Yeah, I saw they were selling Apple TV remotes and things. They're branching out, so you could probably find some tech gear that would be
they are a good place to find stuff that you wouldn't expect. Like they had AirPods Max in stock when nobody else did.
Right. You
know what I mean? So occasionally people sleep on Verizon, but you can find some good deals.
Yeah. Your data plan you got for Verizon, that's the one you'll be getting after you get your promotional, or will you be stepping down a tier?
No, I'm going ahead and keeping it. So
Okay.
I have to travel a lot. Used to, I did that for work. Right now, I'm sort of on a break from work, but I have dialysis 3 times a week. So I make use of that data plan and that unlimited data pretty well.
Yeah. It's nice in the settings app. Oh, yours is unlimited. So in the settings app, mine says, 6 hours left of 8 gigabytes. Because I guess I was very worried that it was like a 7-day plan that I signed up for accidentally. But I guess it's linked to my monthly billing cycle, so I'll probably get a prorated first month is my guess. But it's nice to give you a little countdown. You have 6 hours to use your 8 gigs, otherwise you lose it or whatever.
And you can see how much data each app is used individually inside the cellular plan. So you can keep up with a pretty good idea of what you're using. I mean, to be honest, I'll use music or I'll use a little bit of streaming here and there. But, even I don't push it to the limit as to what I could do. I could probably do 10 gigs a month on my iPad and it would be more than enough. Mm-hmm. But because it's all rolled into all these different lines that I already have, it just makes sense to go ahead and get the unlimited.
Yeah. And T-Mobile's was you need to do the 10 gigs or it's higher, and then you could eventually change plans to the unlimited plan linked to your phone or something like that. And it's very cool. Just in the settings app, how it shows you versus needing to go to T-Mobile's website or, with Comcast logging into their website to try to check how much data you're using. And that's just, it's nice being all on board like that.
Yeah.
And the M1 chip, I've noticed it, especially with Ferrite, is the biggest thing, where I'm doing my export to level the audio in mono, and that export is just done in a second. It's before I'd let me get some water and come back, and now it's just it's done right away. It's crazy fast.
It is amazingly fast. And I want to say that I saw that Wooji Juice, the vendor on Twitter, said they hadn't done any optimizations for it yet or anything. I think it was just they were going off of
the multi-core aspects of how they do their processing is why it's so fast.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have to do anything specifically for the M1. It just once the M1 was in place, boom, it was there and it was done. Yeah. And it pretty amazing. So that right up there with LumaFusion are both critical applications inside of my workflows.
Yeah, and then the RAM, I am noticing Safari, all the tabs just stay there. That's a nice change. In the apps themselves, you can go back many days and that app's still kicking.
I am the world's worst about having 2,000 tabs open on my browser, especially on my phone.
Yeah.
I need to go through and spend a weekend just closing tabs, reading things, and it's I'll come back and read this later. But iPhone 12 Pro handles it pretty well, but the iPad Pro, it is lightning fast. There's no matter how many tabs you open, I haven't been able to do it yet, where, it swaps out and you'll see it reload the page or whatever. It hasn't done that yet.
Yeah. And it's a super impressive chip for the apps that are already taking advantage of it, like Ferrite and LumaFusion and all the RAM that can do in the background. I guess WWDC will tell us what's next for the OS to handle more of this cool stuff.
It's definitely an upgrade if you're coming from a different type of iPad. If you're coming from the regular iPad or the iPad Air, it's a huge jump up, and it's hard to describe. Until you go to use it, you do the little 4-finger gesture to bring up all your tabs or open apps. And it's so amazingly lightning fast that it's not like using your iPad before. I don't know. I feel like I'm overselling it, but I don't. I don't want to oversell it, but it is that fast.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if there's much more to say. It's just, they're always faster and faster. And I thought Ferrite's pretty fast. I don't have any lag or anything. And the exports seem pretty snappy, but yeah, it was noticeably a better experience exporting and wasting less of my time doing that.
Have you noticed any use cases that you have where the iPad just doesn't cut it, that you still have to rely on the Mac? And if so, how are you doing that?
So I have a 2011 MacBook Air, so it's now a decade old MacBook Air. It's 11 inches. I love that little guy. Dust is kind of embedding itself into parts of the Luna, which is kind of sad. But the only thing I remote into that with the Screens app for is uploading new songs into iTunes Match, which I still can't do on my iPad. That's the only thing I still use that Mac for is iTunes Match management.
Interesting. So, well, in my particular use case, I still rip a lot of stuff in Handbrake.
Okay. Yeah, I used to be a big fan of that. I had a huge library of that, and then I just gave up and just buy stuff in iTunes when I want a movie and kind of be sad when movies aren't available. And also sad when all the extras aren't quite the same in iTunes as they would be on Blu-ray or DVD, because I do miss those quite a bit.
So what I do there, most of the stuff that I collect is stuff that's out of print. So I'm a big out of print sort of TV and movie nerd. I'll go and buy stuff, that I watched when I was like 10 or something.
Yeah.
I'll watch, some sitcom that was on for like 2 weeks. That gets a special edition on Blu-ray, but you'll never see it on iTunes or Amazon or whatever.
I have on disc, on DVD, like Bad Batch, or Bad Taste, and Meet the Feebles, all Peter Jackson's like old movies that haven't made it their way digital yet.
So I like doing stuff like that. So I still have a use for being able to rip things, and I'll use the Mac Mini to do that a lot. And I'll remote into that, and of course the ripping on an M1 is really, really good. And I have like this big storage array of like 16 terabytes worth of data that that I can just stick into 16 terabytes of that I can use for those types of things. So a lot of Blu-rays, a lot of 4K stuff.
Yeah.
Just runs the gamut. But usually if it's available somewhere else, I won't have it. I'll just stick with if it's not available on iTunes in 4K, but I can get the special edition 4K, I'll rip on a Mac. Mm-hmm. So coming into screens and doing something like that is usually pretty cool. I built a PiVPN.
What is this exactly?
Okay, so you have a Raspberry Pi,
yep.
And then you have a sort of a very secure VPN that's very easy to set up that uses the WireGuard protocol. It's very simple. Like anybody can do this in like 10 seconds. I used to build VPNs using they were all artisanal, handcrafted, and it was terrible. They were hard to maintain. They would die a lot. This thing has been so rock solid, knock wood, don't have to reboot. I'm very fortunate to live in an area where I have gigabit up and gigabit down and no cap.
Okay,
so
that's very helpful.
It's the only time you'll ever hear me praise AT&T, but my God, they compete with Comcast so well in my area that Comcast can't even compete with that. So I'm able to have a Ethernet connected VPN. So if let's say I'm out and about and I want to route all my traffic through my home internet connection, I can do it. And it's super simple to do that on the iPhone. Or I can just selectively come back and do whatever I want on my internal network. So when I'm out and about and I want to connect, there's lots of advantages that you can do over this VPN connection. So you're talking to a guy who spent a lot of time in the hospital, and one of the things that I did was set up Steam Link so that I was doing it over my VPN back to my iPhone back during the fall. I can do the PS4 remote play. Now it's a little slow. There's going to be some latency because it's not as fast, but it'll work over that VPN, especially the fact that I'm gigabit connected.
So the VPN makes it feel like to your PS4 you're on the local network because
it fools it. Yes, it fools it.
Okay, it feels like that. Okay,
yeah,
because there's VNC, which lets you remote in regardless of your network state. You could just be on the regular cell connection, remote in through VNC. A lot of the systems use like their own like Screens Connect type thing, but a VPN lets you not worry about Screens Connect and all the systems. Yeah.
So think about it when you're in your house and you're playing, your PlayStation's in the other room and you're playing on like your iMac or something. Mm-hmm. You can, it's like you're there. Same thing. You get an IP that's assigned locally on your local network. The PS4 doesn't know the difference to say, you're not on your local network. No, it goes, oh, you're on your local network. Okay, and then it works.
Yeah.
Of course, with the Xbox, you don't need that. You can do the Xbox One or Xbox S or one of those, and you can do that over the internet.
And they also have the cloud service that's coming out too.
Yeah. But yeah, the VPN is super helpful. So if I ever find myself in a situation either personally or for work where I need access to something where I need access to my M1 or my iMac or my MacBook Pro, I can just simply remote in, and once I have a local IP through the VPN, I can just use Screens or VNC or something like that, and I'm locally connected.
And you just have that as a configuration in the settings app that you turn on and off at will?
Well, I have a VPN configuration on the iPhone that I enable. So you can do it with WireGuard. You can have it so that if I'm on any Wi-Fi connection that's not my home Wi-Fi, automatically instantiate a VPN connection and leave it connect. Or you can say, anytime I'm on cellular and not on my Wi-Fi at home, instantiate a connection where I'm, constantly connected. And unlike a lot of VPNs, this will auto reconnect. So if you do get disconnected, you're not constantly having to go, oh God, it died, get my wife to go down there and explain what a Raspberry Pi is, first of all, and then have her go over there. No, it's a little box over here that you press the button on and reset it. You don't have to do any of that. So it's been very reliable and rock solid.
Yeah. Most of the time I'm connected to the firewall thing by OneBlocker is what I'm using my VPN connection for these days.
Okay.
Which is kind of a cool little service that came out. I guess not a service. It sort of is, but yeah. It's an app that you can pay for and blocks all the tracking stuff that apps can do to identify you.
Yeah, I used to use that back in the day as well as an added layer of protection. Because that's the other thing. If you have a PiVPN, you can also run a Pi-hole at home as an ad blocker. And if you have everything routed to go through your PiVPN, you also get the benefits of the Pi-hole ad blocker at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
So I found that for a lot of streaming video sites that have ads, that is a good little device to have because it'll let you just keep going and watching videos without ads being served up. So we veered off of the iPad there, but it's a very useful utility.
So remoting into your Mac, what's the app you tend to use to do that?
Screens is the one that I use the most.
Yeah.
I bought that a long time ago. I've been one of these people. I've tried just about every single thing known to man to remote back to my PC. I used to use Go to My PC. I used to use LogMeIn, Hamachi back when that was still free. What was the other one? Parallels I've used before.
Yeah.
Most of these companies, when they get into a certain level, they don't want to provide that for individuals anymore. So they price you out of the market. It's like, if you want to keep this service, it's going to cost you an insane amount of dollars.
Right.
And, that's their way of getting you off the service without saying, well, we still offer it. So they were all unreliable to some degree, or they all priced themselves out of the market where I didn't want to use them anymore. I'm looking at you, LogMeIn, Hamachi. That was a great one. And then it just, they charge something exorbitant for it. So since Screens is just using VNC with, SSH as a sort of a wrapper around it, it's been rock solid reliable.
Yeah.
And I've loved giving the developers that money, but I haven't had to do anything special. Like, I think there's an app you can get if you aren't that familiar with VNC that sort of makes it even crazy simpler. But for me, it's
that's
just
the
going
Screens Connect thing you can throw on your Mac to help it log you in.
Yeah, but if you just go to your settings and you turn on screen sharing, if you turn on screen sharing inside of your Mac, then I've never had an issue with it
because of the VPN
whatsoever.
Probably, I'm guessing.
Yes, because the VPN makes it dead simple. You're not having to traverse anything else over the internet. You're getting an IP on your local network, and it works great.
And has living with the Magic Keyboard been a giant improvement, having this trackpad with this remoting in ability?
Oh my God, having a cursor, having a trackpad, having a mouse pointer, so to speak, on the screen has been revolutionary for me. I'm still getting used to it. It makes it like using more of a Mac. So when I sort of have a disagreement in philosophy with some of my podcast co-hosts when we talk about these sorts of things, where they're like, "Oh, a Mac is so much better for just being able to go and connect and do something like that." I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, you guys have Magic keyboards, you have the cursor, the pointer, you can go and do these things now like you're on a Mac. Mm-hmm. When I got my M1 and I started loading up iOS apps onto the M1, I got sort of a taste because I used the Magic Trackpad on the Macs for that, and it was like, wow, this must be what it's like of using an iPad app with a Magic Keyboard on the new iPad. So I don't know what they're talking about because I've loved it so far. It has made it a more Mac-like experience without really sort of compromising the iPad experience.
Yeah.
So I'm loving that.
And even on screens, if you connect to an external monitor, it will optimize for that display. So if you just throw it on the external monitor, you can put your iPad in clamshell mode, and as long as you're unlocked, you can just use it as a little computer that way.
And see, that's something that I actually have to try. That's something I've been delinquent on and have not hooked it to a second monitor, which I need to do, and I want to see how well that's supported for me. But that is also very exciting for me, is being able to, again, that's also the quote-unquote, here's a real computer type of setup, is sometimes you're going to have a second screen. So being able to use Sidecar, being able to use Duo, any of those things to be able to take advantage of this, I'm really excited about. But actually I know it sounds silly, but having the Magic Trackpad, so to speak, for the iPad I feel like I've jumped from 2015 to 2021 finally.
Yeah. So with the 2017 iPad, did you ever use the Magic Trackpad 2 as a standalone trackpad, or were you always just with the keyboard and that's it for that device?
I knew that I could, but I just never did.
Okay.
And, I felt like, oh, I'll get a new iPad any day now and it'll have it. Oh, I'll get a new iPad any day now and it'll have it. And that's what kept me from doing it. But getting used to the Magic Keyboard has been sort of a learning thing where you have to go back and remap keys because there's no escape key, or being able to remember to use the same shortcuts here and there. Now, something that's going to sound really weird is that I did take a regular Mac Magic Keyboard, complete with the numeric keypad, and hook that into the iPad just to see what that was like, because I would have an escape button, and that was a little bit different than what I expected. So on a Mac, if you have a Magic Keyboard and you plug it in via the Lightning to USB cable, if you unplug it, it stays bonded via Bluetooth to the Mac.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's a neat little experience. That experience does not exist on the iPad. So if you take your Space Gray Magic Keyboard and you plug it into and I'm talking the one for the Mac, into the into the iPad Pro, then when you unplug it, it no longer sees it. It's not a Bluetooth device. It's not something that can communicate with it wirelessly. If it is, it does not work as seamlessly as it does on the Mac. I mean, I didn't spend a lot of time looking at it, but
I guess the pro of that is you could be plugged and wired to the iPad, then unplug it and it's your Mac keyboard. And the same thing for the trackpad. You could be wired in, and then unplug it, and then you're on your Mac.
That is a good point. I guess since the primary use case is a Mac, then that isn't necessarily a negative. But I just wanted to see if that would work, and it did, just because I wanted the easy escape key before I went in there and remapped it. But having the gestures, having the things like Command Tab where it works just like on a Mac is really nice. I'm still getting used to all the little shortcuts that exist on Mac OS and trying to see if they exist on the iPad. But fortunately, there's been a lot of good YouTube videos for that, so I'm not really missing anything so far. But it is sort of a weird thing to move from the Mac keyboard, if you use that a lot, to moving to something like the Magic Keyboard for the iPad, where it's mostly the same, but not quite.
Yeah. Something I forgot about the Smart Keyboard. I used the 10.5-inch iPad Pro for a couple weeks while I waited for the new one to come out, because I sold in 2020. And I forgot on the couch how prone that iPad was to tipping over face down because of the angle being wrong, and how the Magic Keyboard is just so sturdy. And I forgot that difference there. Are there setups and situations you're finding yourself able to use your iPad in now because this new sturdiness in the Magic Keyboard?
Yeah, when I was using it on my lap, strangely enough, in dialysis the other day, I sat there and used this, and it seemed better to me than a MacBook would be in terms of ease of use of staying up on the lap. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but it is definitely, having used the previous one, it felt a little more top-heavy last year.
Yeah.
In the brief time that I used it, than it does now. But then again, I was using it more of an awkward angle there than I was here. But in the lap, I found it to be very comfortable and very... it did not fall over, I guess. I guess because the angles are so rigid that you can adjust it to. So whatever angle you're trying to do it to, once you move it to that angle, if you move it so that it's a little more... the top is closer to you than the bottom, I suppose, it doesn't fall over at all. And that was a great viewing angle for me. So I'm finding it to be pretty good. Now, when I put it on a couch or a bed or something like that to watch something, I fully expect it's probably going to fall over.
Yeah. It is kind of crazy how you can hold it, like, put on your knees and kind of have it basically almost face down, and it will stay on there, and the hinge will stay sturdy. So that hinge is pretty solid, but the top heaviness can take over at times.
Yeah, especially if your hands aren't counterbalancing the weight on the keyboard, I suppose.
Yep. Exactly. Did the Apple Pencil 2 arrive in your home? Is that something you're interested in at all?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all of this arrived well before the iPad did, which was so frustrating. I even got my name engraved on the pencil.
Yeah, I got an engraving on my pencil as well. That's the only thing I got engraved with the iPad setup.
Yeah, I've never been a big engraving fan, but something like the pencil, I figure, why not?
So how are you finding the new pencil? I think the charging is much better.
Well, I was a big fan of the first-gen pencil, but I just didn't use it as much because it was always dead.
Yeah.
So I tried to compensate for this. I bought you can buy anything on Amazon. I had this little weird dongle that you could set the pencil in so that it was sort of a female lightning connector, so to speak. And you could plug the pencil into it, and then whenever you went to use the pencil, just yank it out of that and, go to town. But the problem is you'd have to have that in your primary area as to where you use the pencil. And if I had it for the regular iPad and sticking it into the lightning port, that thing still took forever to charge. So you're sort of sitting there awkwardly with your iPad, and you'd want to use it, and it would be completely dead. So you're having to sit there at this awkward angle. What if I'm wanting to read something in portrait mode? Well, I can't really, because I'm stabbing myself in the lap with the pencil.
You hold it by the pencil. It's like a little sign.
Yeah. Sort of like a corn dog or or a what do you call it, a popsicle or something like that.
Yeah.
It was just they really didn't think that through very well. So I was very envious when the second gen came out and you could charge it on the side, which seemed like a much better setup. So I did play with it last fall just to see, and it's great. I love being able to draw. It's something that I've done for a long time, but I planned on doing it more with Procreate and those types of things when I had the original first gen pencil, but I just didn't do it because of that annoyance. But now I always have it with me, so I'm starting to delve into. And there's so many things that you can use the pencil with. So like Photoshop, Procreate. What's another one? Affinity Photo. There's so many things that when the pencil first launched just didn't exist.
Yeah.
That does now. So I'm loving being able to do that, and of course, being able to take a screenshot with the pencil just by dragging up from the lower left or lower right is really a neat thing too, because then you can draw on it. So, because that's one of the things that when I take a screenshot a lot of times on the phone, I'm having to use the little virtual pencil and I want to draw an arrow here and point this out to this person or that person. So having the pencil always in reach and always charged is, I see myself using this so much more than I did in the past. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah. And I'd encourage you to check out Ferrite as an editing option. I'll jump back and forth between keyboard, trackpad, and the pencil, depending on what I'm feeling that day. And both are really fun, enjoyable experiences.
Yeah, I'm dying to actually use the pencil on Ferrite. I know one of my podcast co-hosts, when he edits, does the same thing. So I plan on doing that and jumping between that and the sort of the Magic Trackpad as well. But it's opened up a whole new world, and it's like using a brand new computer, right? It's not like just I went and got a new iPad and the 2017 was cool, but I guess this one is cool. No, for me, this is an entirely new paradigm.
Yeah, because accessories really make the iPad the iPad, and it's a whole new set of different things to use with it.
And just stuff that extends the functionality beyond what I was used to for the 2017. But I still have the first generation pencil. I may end up giving that to my mom because it does work on the first generation, not the first generation, the latest generation iPad.
It works on all the iPads now, the mini and
yes, yeah. So that might be something worthwhile for her, or give it to my wife and let her use it on her iPad Mini or something. But I figure my mother will probably get more use out of it than my wife would. But yeah, it's I'm really loving the second gen pencil. I feel like I really made a quantum upgrade in terms of, because I've been sitting there looking at this tech for so long, going, I want this, I'm going to get this, I'm going to use this, any day now. And they took forever to get that 2021 iPad out that had the M1, so...
Yeah. No, I know the feeling when I jumped from 2017 to 2020 is a similar feeling, and can only imagine even a year after this with all this new stuff in here as well. Did the length of the pencil, did you notice that at all? When I first got it, it took me a while to adjust to being shorter for me, at least.
No, I tend to hold the pencil in the same place anyway, so I didn't really have to adjust my grip all that much. I do like the fact that it has the flattened edges, whereas the other was perfectly cylindrical.
Yeah.
It feels like it's easier to grip in the pencil too than it is the first generation pencil. I haven't had any problems with a tip or anything where sometimes I guess, people will complain that it slips around or, it scratches or whatever. I haven't had that experience. I never had that experience with the first gen pencil either though. So I was able to draw some neat things with the first gen, and so far it's been minimal disruption to move to the second gen.
Yeah. Now, something new with the 2018 and newer iPad Pros is being able to charge devices with USB-C. And have you done this yet? Like, one thing I could think of for you is if you have in your Airpods Max case, if you have a third-party case of some sort, you could throw the USB-C to Lightning cable in there, and you could just charge your headphones when you need to through your iPad now instead of grabbing a brick.
I haven't yet, but I will. I'm in love with my Anker power brick that I take everywhere. So I've sort of been spoiled in my particular use case. I think I have one of those 10,000 milliamp hour Anker batteries that has the USB-C on it.
Okay.
And when I was in the hospital, I could charge my phone from dead every night, without even having to charge the battery. And you slap one of the things for the Apple Watch on there, and it's super useful. I should try that on the iPad. I have used the pass-through on the Magic Keyboard to be able to charge the iPad, but I haven't gone in the other direction. But if I did, the two things that I would probably use it for the most would be charging the AirPods Pro and charging my Apple Watch. So both of those are low power.
Yeah, I've got a little 1-inch USB-C to Apple Watch charger, and it's fun to use the iPad for that at times.
It would be a mind bender because you wouldn't expect to be able to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like having enough juice to be able to send something in the other direction.
Yeah, and it's cool being able to just be charging your iPad through that smart connector Magic Keyboard, and then at the same time be charging something else. It's like...
off the side of the side of the iPad, yes.
Yeah, and I guess that power output is a little bit higher as well than the M1 version. So accessories that need more power, there's some portable monitors even that can be charged and run entirely off of a USB-C cord from that iPad now.
I do wonder what that would do to your battery life, especially depending on things like cellular being enabled and screen brightness and things like that. I would be a little afraid if it was something I was definitely relying on.
Right. It'd probably be a bit higher draw, but if you need a 2-hour intense run, you could probably do that,
Oh, yeah. And I like I said, I see myself charging the AirPods Pro or my Apple Watch via that method. Now, I do need to find a USB-C to Apple Watch charger. I know that they make them now, but mine are so old that they're all USB-A, so that would be a problem. But
yeah, Apple sells a really tiny one, which is super handy to have because it's nice to have really short cables, and they make one for Apple Watches is very handy to have.
Strangely enough, I was giving my mom my old Series 4, and I was out to buy an Apple Watch charger this weekend, and when I went to the Apple Store's site, I noticed that they were all USB-C to the Apple Watch. I'm like, oh, that's weird. But all of her stuff is still USB-A, so I had to go to Amazon, I guess, and buy one of the older ones. But that was kind of weird.
Yeah, I do like that they're all USB-C, so at least I can just... But yeah, if you don't have those chargers handy, that's kind of a pain.
They're really going to have to make that switch and switch everything over to USB-C at this point, because now it hurts me personally now that I have USB-C but then again, I've had a MacBook Pro that's relatively recent, so I've had the USB-C pain for a while anyway. But.
Yeah, and the Lightning thing, you have USB-C to Lightning cords around as well still. Yeah. And then, do you use your iPad in tablet mode? Do you pop it off the Magic Keyboard and do stuff with it?
All the time.
Yeah?
Yes.
What kind of stuff are you doing with it in that context?
Reading books is very good with that. So using the Kindle app or iBooks, I like doing that more in portrait mode than doing that in sort of landscape. I'm a big comic book fan, so I do Marvel Unlimited, and Marvel Unlimited will work in either orientation, but it looks much better in portrait mode.
Okay.
Because it'll zoom in on certain panels and zoom out automatically, and it just looks so much better in portrait mode. Sometimes I just like to browse the web and make it sort of not a laptop-like experience. Like this is something that I also sort of I get after my podcast co-hosts about, because a lot of them seem to be more Mac browsers than iPhone browsers or iPad browsers. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, if you're wanting to browse the web from the couch while you mindlessly watch TV, I'm not going to grab a Mac and do that. That's just incredibly silly to me. That's like, why would I do that? And these are all folks that have iPad Pros. And yet they'll go out and, I grabbed my MacBook and I was just sitting there on the couch watching, and I'm thinking, why would you do that? Like, you could just grab the iPad. The battery life's going to last so much longer. You don't have to deal with a keyboard if you don't want to. I'm always trying to figure out people's use cases,
right,
and how they differ from mine. And I realize that for some people, what's for me is not going to be for them. I get that.
Yeah, some people still have natural scrolling turned off on their Macs.
See, I have to have the same thing between devices.
Yeah.
Right? I want that natural scrolling from the iPad on the Mac. Like, how do you go between the two and not have it?
I don't get it. Yeah.
It's... the older I get, the more I want a consistent experience between all of these devices. I don't want to have to think about it when I pick it up and go, oh, wait a minute, this is not a Mac, this is an iPhone, this is an iPad. I want it to be all the same experience. And I certainly can't understand anyone else who doesn't do that. So if you're going to be browsing the web, what are you doing that you need the keyboard with, instead of having just a standalone device? Now, even if I'm using that in a portrait or landscape orientation, I guess you could make the case there that if I'm typing something up, I'm not doing it on the screen. I'm going to sit there I'm going to do it on the Magic Keyboard.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll have the Magic Keyboard handy and throw it on for like 30 seconds and take it off again sometimes.
Yeah, and that's kind of the use case that I have as well. If I have a tweet that's going to be really, really long, or somebody sends me an email and I can't just quickly reply, that's like, oh god, this is going to take a second. Then I may go and get the actual keyboard. But in most cases, I chalk it up, I guess, to age more than anything else, because a lot of me and my co-hosts, we're old people. So if you grew up doing this, that was the paradigm you're the most used to, then you're gonna probably natively reach for something with the keyboard. I'm lucky in that I don't seem to stick to one paradigm or another. I can kind of move between them depending on what situation is best. And that's what I'm always kind of thinking of is, my wife was saying, why do you even need an iPad? I see you on your phone all the time. And it's like, yeah, because I don't have an iPad. And when I have an iPad, I won't be trying to read books on my phone,
right,
where my 45-year-old eyes are having a hard time reading what I'm seeing. So, it's whatever works for you in the moment. But I don't understand those folks that will still reach for the MacBook when you have the perfectly good iPad for the simple purposes. It's usually lighter, not always. I guess the iPad Pro is quite a hoss. But for me, there's just nothing better than being able to switch between those two orientations. And, it needs to be a keyboard and mouse when it needs to be a keyboard and mouse, and it can just be a simple book reading machine. Or, I'm reading my RSS feeds or Facebook, where I'm not really going to respond to anything. It's just something I'm scrolling through. It's perfect that way.
And you mentioned Marvel Unlimited. What's the comic book experience these days? Like, does it do fancy animations between I don't know, what do you call them? The squares of each.
Well, so Comicsology is what I used to use way back in the day. This is pre-Amazon acquisition, about 10 years ago. And reading comics, being a big comic book fan, obviously the iPad was made for such a thing. And in the beginning, when these apps came out, you had the Marvel app, the DC app, the Comicsology app that had the best of both worlds, right? It sold both. Then when Amazon bought Comicsology, you couldn't really buy comics through Comicsology anymore. Now, it used to, when you could, before Amazon owned them, oh my God, I spent so much money just at night. I'd start reading something. I got to know how this ends, and next thing you know, I just bought 10 comic books in a row and spent, between $5 and, $30. And I didn't even mean to. It's like this issue is 99 cents and this issue is 99 cents. But if you read the entire run, the most recent issues are $5.99 a piece or $3.99 a piece or whatever. So the next thing you know, you'd spent money. So I was looking for a way to not do that. And Marvel had an all-you-can-eat sort of a thing called, it's basically Netflix for Marvel Comics. They run about 6 months behind, but you pay, I think I pay $70 a year, and you get 13,000 comics that are constantly being updated. So let's say that I didn't see this latest run of Taskmaster or something that just came out. Well, within a month or two, it'll start rolling in, and you'll be behind, but you can sit there and catch it at your leisure. And the way that the Marvel's technology is the same as Comicsology's, where they have this. I forget what they call it. It's a patented technology that they call it. But what'll happen is that you'll see, like, it zooms out, so you get to see the entire frame if there's a lot of stuff going on. And then if you do, like, I'm going to go to the next page, it'll zoom into a certain panel and then zoom out and then zoom into a certain panel. And it gives you the experience of watching a narrative where the camera is sort of going where it wants you to go.
Yeah.
And it's a great experience. So, but yeah, 13,000 comics, the animations are smooth. Because if you try to do this on an iPhone or something like that, it's a terrible experience. You need a tablet or you need a computer or something where it has the room to sort of zoom in and zoom out and move around. Maybe on a iPhone, Pro Max, it's not as bad, but on the iPhone.
But even the aspect ratio seems better on iPad 4:3 versus the
longer. And when you're doing the portrait mode as opposed to landscape, like landscape, it'll work, but it's sort of janky at times. Whereas if you're in portrait, it was designed for that. So it's buttery smooth, perfect, and it's just the easiest reading experience ever. And of course, on that 12.9 screen, they look absolutely beautiful. Now, for the longest time, they weren't doing things in high resolution.
Yeah.
But I think they've gotten a little bit better about that because it does look a lot better than it did previously.
It's not HDR yet, is it?
I don't think so.
Because photos can be HDR, so I'm wondering if eventually they will enable that.
If I had to guess, knowing that it might be Disney that does this, is that I could see myself having to pay extra at some point to get some feature that they enable. But man, the comic book experience on those are so good. And occasionally I'll still get antsy and go into the Marvel app, which still honors the back end purchases. So when Amazon, Comicsology used to provide the back end for all this stuff. I don't know if it still does all these years later, but once Comicsology got bought by Amazon, you couldn't buy it through Comicsology, but you could buy it through the Marvel and DC apps if you wanted to. And when you did, they would then show up inside of Comicsology. So it was kind of one of those workarounds where you could go and, Marvel doesn't care about losing the cut so long as they keep the iOS purchases, rolling in, and then they would show up all in one consolidated app. I haven't used Comicsology in so long. Mostly I'm more of a Marvel guy anyway, so most of my purchases are in either Amazon or Marvel anyhow.
Gotcha. So in your day job, you're a senior sales engineer. What role does the iPad serve when you're on the road and at the office working in day to day? Is this an accessory to your regular computer, or what kind of role does this fill?
So work provides me with a MacBook Pro, and I do tend to use that a lot just because they do provide it. Now, when I'm traveling, I can definitely lean on the iPad Pro. Now, in my job, I'm a sales engineer. And what that means is what I'm doing is a lot of times I work with salespeople to demonstrate concepts. We sell hybrid clouds to customers. So if you want to build an on-premise cloud, if you want to build something in AWS and Azure, you want to have a mix of the two, we can demonstrate that for you. So for my job, really all I need are things like Zoom, a browser, Slack, and occasionally something like Prompt by Panic where you can SSH around. And that is perfect when you're traveling. So when you're traveling, you do a lot of business with government agencies, you do a lot of business with financial institutions, and understandably, they don't want anything on their network. That's a big hassle for them, especially for the government agencies. I do have a fun anecdote to tell that I'll as a side note. I was at a government agency. I won't say which one, but my cohort at the agency was typing something and he kept getting a typo wrong. And I just reached over to like go, no, this key right here. And everybody in the room goes, no, you can't touch it. So they all like stopped me hand over keyboard. I'm like, okay, I'm going back to my own keyboard now. So that's just to illustrate they don't mess. You can't even touch their keyboard, let alone, get on their network in a lot of cases, but you still need that network access. And that's where having something like an iPad where you have cellular connectivity comes in handy, because you're still going to need to connect back to the home office. You're still going to need to get on the internet. You're still going to need to do something. And as long as your system is completely self-contained, like a phone, that's not really a security risk.
Right.
They see what you're doing. You don't really have the power to multitask. It's an iOS device. It's contained. They're not really worried about you pulling something off and sticking on the network just because a lot of that limited functionality. But you're also not having to worry about tethering. And in some of these places, I worked at a financial institution where you couldn't create a hotspot. So even if you needed to get online, they would come and, slap your hand and go, no, that's not allowed.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they expected some people to get on the, network connectivity. But in what I need to do, as long as those options are available, and they are, then it's good enough. Now, to a lot of people, that may make a lot of hardcore techie people cringe, because they're like, well, what do you mean? What if I want to run a virtual machine? What if I need a database? What if I need something like that? And again, that's where having a VPN and having dedicated machinery set up on the back end that you can remote into comes in handy. As somebody who's worked extensively with things like VMware, even having a beefy laptop and trying to spin up VMs that are going to be usable and demonstrate good enterprise concepts, that's going to be very difficult, even on you could have a loaded out Dell or MacBook or whatever, and it's still not going to be a great experience.
Intel.
You're still...
MacBook.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I'm sorry. Yes, an Intel MacBook. Yeah, don't get me started on how virtualization has changed under the ARM-only architectures.
Yeah, it's going to be...
But it's going to be a change. But that's, again, when you go back to what an iPad is for, and you hear Steve Jobs way back when say, sometimes you need a car, sometimes you need a truck, having something that you can remote into that's purpose driven for that type of purpose is always going to yield you a better experience. So when people say, oh, it's not a real computer, it's like, I can do everything that my job requires with this, and it may not be exactly the way that I would do it on a MacBook. Like I could, just alt tab between this and this and this and this. I got 20 plus years of muscle memory in me. I know how to make a computer do it a lot quicker than I can sometimes an iPad, but there's trade-offs that you're going to get with that's going to be a much bigger pain. Like I may not be able to connect into a network. I may not be able to get a usable network connection. I may not be able to, have something like CenterStage if I need that for where I'm at. Or you get where I'm saying. Sometimes all you need sometimes is just enough computer, right? I need something just enough to run Slack. I need something just enough to run... And when I've been on both sides of the house where I've needed a computer that was really beefy to do my day-to-day, but then I also needed something that was just good for presentations and some SSHing around, just demonstrating a concept, then I really hated having that heavy computer because it was much more than what I needed. It would take a really long time to boot up. You have to wait for antivirus or whatever that you had to do that was corporately mandated. You had a lot of limitations and things imposed on you when really all you needed was something simple to load a PowerPoint or, you go in and... I'm going to SSH in and I'm going to load up this cloud management software that I already have, that works in any browser. I mean, why would you want more computer than that? So the traveling aspect is really nice. Being able to use it on a plane, being able to put it on a seat back and have that be adjustable. For the many years, I was about double the size that I am now. So flying was already not fun. And having to use a computer at the same time was almost a no-go. So, I've lost... half my body weight over the last few years. And even though I have more room when I'm flying, it's still not a lot of fun when you have, sort of a laptop, because people will jam their seat back. And, I've seen laptops that got bent. I've seen, people get really pissed because a drink gets knocked into whatever. Mm-hmm. People are really not considerate when they fly. So having something that can break down. Now, again, the 12.9, this is why I almost went with the 11-inch, but I couldn't get that great display. So I had to go 12.9. Having that is something that you kind of need in situations like that. If you're traveling, what if you want to watch a movie? I'd much rather watch it on an iPad Pro than whatever MacBook Pro screen you're going to give me.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks better. I could stream things. It's just such a better experience if you're able to do it. And if you have the ability to VPN back into work or home or whatever you need, if you have an edge case. There are times that I needed a Windows machine for something, so I could VPN into home and RDP in. or, VPN back into work and RDP into something that's a VM in a ESX cluster or something somewhere. So I'm a big believer in having enough computing power for what the task requires and not feeling that you have to have overkill. I don't need to have a beefy MacBook Pro that can run 10 VMs if what I'm going to show the client is something that's on an ESX system back in the lab that I can just connect to, or more likely than not, out in AWS or Azure or Google Cloud,
Right. Yeah. And with Zoom, it's great. It works in split view, which most camera apps don't. So hopefully that gets addressed next week.
Whatever special access that they get from Apple, I know a lot of people are up in arms. I don't care. Keep it coming.
Everyone should get that special access next week, I hope.
Yes. I would hope that they would give that to everybody. But, Zoom works really well on iPad and iOS. And, if you want to talk about an app that's had some issues, remember, it came out last year on the Mac that they were having to kill the process or do something. Yep. They were having to give it unfettered root and something else. No worries about that on iOS. No worry about that on iPadOS. They can't do that. And Apple's sure not going to pass that out like they would like a special camera API. So,
yeah,
that, again, it's more secure than macOS. Even, Phil Schiller said it under oath, this past couple of weeks in the Epic trial that macOS is kind of a mess when it comes to malware, and it's not on iOS. I'm not going to get the same kind of scrutiny if I take in an iPad to a customer that I would if I took in a Mac. It's just, you just won't.
Yeah. I guess one of the final things I just want to mention is how great is remote play on the iPad Pro with this XDR display, in the fact that PlayStation now supports Rumble and the light bar. Everything's fully supported with their controller natively through the iPad.
It is wonderful. Like, I used to think that the pinnacle was on my iMac, on the 5K iMac. No, the pinnacle is on the iPad right now. And I'm a huge Marvel fan, obviously, and Spider-Man on the PS4 and the Miles Morales sequel, they both look and work wonderfully. I love having a fast LAN connection in my house, right? Everything is Ethernet that can be. So, I've even considered, because I know the iPad supports it, taking my USB-C to Ethernet dongle and going full overkill and, making my iPad Pro hardwired.
Yeah, and some hubs have the Ethernet as well over Thunderbolt, which would be nice.
Yes. So, if you have to, but, the Wi-Fi in my house, I have the Ubiquiti set up. I have like an enterprise grade Wi-Fi anyway, so it works well enough without it. But man, does it look nice. Being able to do any of that stuff over your local network, being able to do like the Steam Link, being able to do the PlayStation, the Xbox, it is a godsend on that display. It is. I cannot emphasize enough.
Yeah, even if it's not HDR content, the blacks just look great, and the contrast and everything, it looks fantastic even for SDR content.
Yeah, you'll never look at it and go, oh, this is garbage. I want to go play it on my 65-inch OLED. No, it still looks good.
Yeah, and one of the new Netflix shows came out in 4:3, which is just a great time on iPad,
Or the Snyder Cut on HBO Max is another to watch.
Yeah, that's true. There's even a black and white rendition, which I can't imagine would look amazing.
Yeah, but everybody noticed when it came out, when they were complaining about the bars, it's like, too bad, the best place to watch it is a 12.9-inch iPad.
Yep, either iPad or a VR headset is the other place I'd recommend.
I haven't tried that on the Oculus, but I want to give that a shot if I can do it.
Yeah, I watched a fair bit on the PSVR, and that was a good experience. And that screen's not the best, but yeah, just seeing it there is kind of cool. Yeah. Anything else before we wrap it up?
No, I think we've covered. We've covered everything. Time has just flown by today, Tim.
Yeah. Well, we had a lot to cover, and I wanted to make sure the XDR iPad didn't get short shrift before the big iPadOS 15 is announced next week.
I will be watching that keynote with bated breath, just like everybody else. I may even be. I always say I'm never going to do this, and I quit doing this a couple years ago, but I quit installing the betas on just about anything because it was such a disappointment. And then somehow when they would mess with the iCloud backend on stuff, it would mess with the things that you didn't upgrade.
Yeah.
I once lost use of iCloud Sync on my phone for an entire summer because I didn't realize that.
I've never had that happen, and I installed the betas pretty early on. I still have my old 10.5-inch iPad Pro around for emergencies.
Well, in Apple's defense, they said don't enable this unless you're, and I was like, who cares?
Yeah.
And I did it, and it was like, yeah, okay, I care. It turns out. But yeah, I'll be watching that with bated breath, and I may even put iPadOS 15 on there just for grins and giggles, just because I'm really, really hoping. They have to know their iPad is so overpowered that the OS can't keep up. It's in every single review that comes out. Like, we all know this, so they have to have something. I want some pro apps.
Yeah.
I want something that makes this really let this hum, really let that 16 gigs of RAM do something. So it's time to break free of those iPhone roots and really get into something awesome over here. And I believe they'll do it. They won't let me down. Come on, Apple, don't let me down.
Yeah. I'm excited. And yeah, as far as betas, it'll be a matter also of, are the features only going to be great if developers hook into the APIs in the fall, or is it system level stuff that is immediately available right away, and the current apps that are good iPad citizens suddenly have the better multitasking or the external monitors because they already did the foundational things for multi-window. That'll be curious. So if they do,
hopefully it'll be a mixture of. Yeah. Hopefully it'll be a mixture of both. Is what I'm hoping.
Probably.
But developers have complained so long, so if Apple gives them what they're asking for, I don't know if we'll see Xcode, but I want to see Final Cut. I want to see Logic. I want to see those things on the iPad, if nothing else. I mean, come on, Apple.
Yeah. Well, where can people find the podcast? I'm not sure if it's ongoing or what the podcast is.
Yes, it's still going on, and you can find us at infiniteloopback.com. And you can find, and that's where from there you can find a link to all of our Twitters. I'm Brian B on Twitter, BRIANB on Twitter, and we are Infin Loopback on Twitter as well. Those will announce, of course, whenever there's a new episode. But we've been doing that since 2016. We've had some hiatuses here and there with my health problems, with me nearly dying a couple of times. But we're still regularly recording. 100 and some odd episodes we've done since 2016, but we're still out there doing it.
Very cool. And it's kind of like Apple News commentary, or what's the...
Yeah, it's sort of an Apple technology focus. We should probably switch that up because there's not usually enough content sometimes for a weekly podcast, which is what our goal has always been for. But everything has been sort of with an Apple focus. So we've got 4 or 5 guys that cycle in and out, depending on their availability. And we've known each other for years and years and years, so it's a very laid-back listen, and we have a lot of fun doing that. And again, that's you can go to infiniteloopback.com, and that's where you can find us. And I'm Brian B, BRIANB on Twitter.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for your time. I'll check that podcast out.
I appreciate it so much, and thanks for having me. It's been fun being a long-time listener, first-time guest.
Well, that was my interview with Brian. Make sure to check out his podcast over at infiniteloopback.com. And my thanks to him for his time recording this episode. And my thanks to you for your time and attention tuning in. As a reminder, you can get episodes early and with embedded chapter markers for just $1 a month over at patreon.com/iPadPros. With that, I'll talk to everyone again real soon all about iPadOS 15. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to everyone again real soon.